My name is Alara, and I'm 26 years old. I've always been a bit of a dreamer, someone who felt things a little too deeply. My life wasn't a fairy tale, not even close. In my late teens and early 20s, I went through a really dark time. It was a period filled with bad choices and deep sadness, a storm I thought I'd never get out of. But I fought my way back. I clawed my way to the light, piece by piece, and rebuilt myself into the person I am today. It wasn't easy. It took years of hard work, a lot of therapy, and surrounding myself with people who truly believed in me. That's why today felt so special. Today, I was marrying the love of my life, Liam. My wedding day wasn't just the start of a new chapter, it was proof that I had made it. It was a beautiful, sun-drenched day in a little garden behind an old mansion. The air smelled of roses and fresh-cut grass, and the sound of a string quartet filled the space. My dress was a simple ivory gown, one that felt like a second skin, and I wore a tiny silver locket with a picture of my late grandmother inside. When I walked down the aisle, every single worry I ever had just melted away. All I saw was Liam. He stood there in his dark suit, looking more handsome than I had ever seen him. He had this warm, kind smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. He was my rock, the person who had loved me for who I was, flaws and all, without ever judging my past. We met a few years ago at a coffee shop where I worked. He came in every day, ordered the same drink, and sat in the same corner. We started talking, and soon, we were inseparable. He was just so easy to be with, so genuine. He knew about my past. I told him everything, not because I had to, but because I wanted to start our relationship with complete honesty. He listened without a single change in his expression, then simply took my hand and said, "Everyone has a story, Alara. What matters is who you are now." That's the moment I knew he was different. He was the one. As the ceremony went on, I could barely hold back my tears. The vows we wrote ourselves felt so real, so true. We promised to be there for each other in good times and bad, to laugh together, to cry together, and to always choose each other. The moment we were pronounced husband and wife, a huge cheer erupted from our family and friends. Liam leaned in and kissed me, and for that moment, I felt like the luckiest woman on earth. After the ceremony came the party. The reception was a blur of joyful noise and happy faces. We had our first dance to an old Motown song, At Last by Etta James. It felt perfect. Liam held me close, swaying to the music, his forehead resting against mine. He whispered in my ear, "I love you, Mrs. Miller." I just squeezed him tighter. Everything felt right. Liam's family was there, of course, and they seemed so happy for us. His parents, who were always kind to me, pulled me into a big hug. Then there was his younger stepbrother, Jackson. He was Liam's best man and stood right by his side the whole day. Jackson was a few years younger than Liam, with a sharp jawline and a confident smirk that never quite left his face. He worked with computers and always seemed to know a little too much about everything. I'd always found him a bit arrogant, like he was playing a game only he knew the rules to. He gave a funny, heartfelt speech about Liam, but at one point, his eyes found mine and a tiny, almost invisible flicker of something cold passed between us. I quickly brushed it off. It was my wedding day. I wasn't going to let anything spoil it. The night went on, a whirlwind of dancing, speeches, and cake. We cut the cake, and Liam playfully smeared some frosting on my nose. We laughed and took photos with everyone. My family was there, too, and seeing them happy, for me, meant the world. My mom kept dabbing her eyes with a tissue, whispering about how beautiful I looked. It was all a dream come true, every single part of it. Finally, the party wound down. Liam and I said our goodbyes, thanking everyone for coming. We were so tired but running on pure happiness. We had booked a beautiful suite at a nearby hotel for the night. The room was gorgeous, with a big balcony overlooking the city lights. We walked in, and I kicked off my heels with a sigh of relief, sinking into the plush couch. "This day was absolutely perfect," I said, leaning my head on Liam's shoulder. He kissed the top of my head. It was everything I ever wanted and more. He got up to grab a drink from the mini fridge. That's when his phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen lit up with a new text message. I wasn't trying to snoop, but I couldn't help but see the name and the first few words. It was from Jackson. The message simply said, "Check the wedding gift I left for you. It's in the wooden box." Liam looked over, saw me looking at the message, and smiled. Jackson, always with the weird surprises. He picked up the phone, a curious look on his face. "He told me to check the wooden box," Liam said, gesturing to a small, dark wooden box sitting on a table in the corner of the room. It was the only gift that wasn't wrapped. We'd been so busy, we hadn't even noticed it. We walked over to it together. The box was smooth and heavy. There was no bow, no card on the outside. Liam carefully lifted the lid. Inside, on a bed of black velvet, was a single USB flash drive. Next to it was a small, folded piece of paper with Liam's name written on it in Jackson's familiar, loopy handwriting. A cold feeling started to creep up my spine. My heart, which had been so full of joy just moments before, now felt like a lump of lead in my chest. This didn't feel like a normal wedding gift. Liam picked up the note first. He unfolded the paper and read the words out loud. My stomach dropped. "You could do better, bro. This isn't the real Alara. Watch this." My world stopped. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. All the happiness from the day, all the love and trust one felt, started to crumble around me. Liam turned to me, the color drained from his face, holding the note and the flash drive in his hands. The look in his eyes wasn't angry, not yet. It was something worse. Doubt. Hey everyone, if you like the story so far, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss the next chapter. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far the story is reaching. The silence in the hotel room was so loud it hurt my ears. Liam stood there, the little piece of paper and the flash drive in his hand, looking at me like I was a stranger. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. "Liam," I whispered, my voice thick with fear. "It's not what you think. Please just throw it away." He didn't move. His face was a mask of confusion and a cold kind of betrayal. He walked over to the television and, without saying a word, plugged in the flash drive. My blood ran cold. My hands started to shake, and I felt sick to my stomach. "Liam, don't." I begged, but it was too late. The screen lit up with a grainy video. The date stamp in the corner read 5 years ago. My stomach twisted into a knot. The footage showed a small, messy apartment, my old apartment. The camera was shaky, like someone was holding it, and it was pointed at me. I was sitting on the floor, my hair a mess, my eyes wide and unfocused. I was a ghost of myself. My mind reeled back to that time, the darkest period of my life. It was a time I had fought so hard to leave behind. I was talking to someone off camera, my words slurred and hard to understand. It was Jackson. I recognized the sound of his voice, even though it was edited. He was trying to get me to clean up my act, and I was fighting back, telling him to leave me alone, my voice full of a desperate kind of anger. I looked a mess, a real, ugly mess. The person on the screen wasn't the woman Liam married today. It was a broken, lost girl. The sight of her made my own eyes sting with tears. Then, the video cut. The music changed to a sad, dramatic song. The footage became choppier, showing flashes of me looking sick and shaky. A series of text messages popped up on the screen, edited to look like a real conversation. The messages were between me and Jackson. The dates were changed to look recent, not from 5 years ago. The words twisted everything. They showed me being angry and ungrateful, rejecting his help, and saying awful things to him. "You think I'll let some wannabe rock star tell me how to live?" One fake text read. Another said, "I'm fine. You're the one with the problem." He had taken little things I said back then and put them together to create a completely false picture, a narrative where he was the caring brother-in-law and I was the unhinged, still addicted girl who was lying to Liam. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't believe it. He'd done this. He had recorded me when I was at my absolute lowest, and then he'd saved it just to use it against me. The video ended with a slow-motion shot of me looking miserable, a final title card appearing on the screen. Still lying.
Still using.
The real Alara. The television screen went black, and the silence returned. It was a different kind of silence this time, heavy with suspicion and doubt. I looked at Liam, my heart in my throat. He was just staring at the black screen, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Liam," I said, my voice barely a whisper.
Please.
"It's not what you think. That was years ago.
I swear to you.
I told you about all of that. I'm not that person anymore." He turned to face me. The warm, loving look he had just an hour ago was completely gone. In its place was a coldness that made me want to shrink away. "Years ago," he said, his voice flat. "The text messages are from last month. It's all there, Alara. Why would he make this up? He's my brother." "He's not a real brother. He's a stepbrother," I said, my voice rising. "Liam, he's always been jealous of you. He was angry because he couldn't control me back then, and he's angry now because you married me. This is all a lie." He edited it. He changed the dates on the messages, I know he did. My words tumbled out, fast and desperate, but they sounded hollow in the empty room. He just shook his head. "I don't know what to believe," he said, and the words were like a physical blow. The trust that was the very foundation of our relationship, the thing I treasured most, was gone. Just like that. I reached for him, wanting to hold his hand, to make him understand, but he took a step back. "How could you lie to me?" he asked, and the pain in his voice was real, even if his anger was pointed at the wrong person. "After everything you told me, I thought we were done with secrets." "We are," I cried, hot tears finally spilling down my cheeks. "This isn't a secret. This is a betrayal. Jackson did this. He's trying to ruin us." Liam just stared at me, his eyes searching my face for a truth he couldn't find in the video. The doubt was too strong. He was my husband, my rock, and in this moment, he chose to believe a video made by his scheming stepbrother over me. The pain was unbearable. He finally looked away, picking up his suit jacket. I can't be here right now," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I need to think. I need to be alone." My heart shattered. "Liam, no. Please don't leave. Talk to me." "Let me prove it." But he was already walking toward the door. "I just need some space, Alara," he said, not even looking back. And then he was gone. The click of the lock echoing in the silence was the last thing I heard. I sank to the floor, my beautiful wedding dress pooling around me. The perfect night, the perfect day was gone, replaced by a cold, lonely reality. The tears came fast and hot, a flood of grief for a future that had just been stolen from me. The next few days were a blur of misery. I stayed in the suite, a prisoner in a gilded cage. I couldn't bring myself to leave. I just wanted to hide from the world. My phone, which had been buzzing nonstop with well wishes, was now eerily quiet. A few people messaged, asking if everything was okay. I saw texts from Liam's mother to Liam, things like, "Are you okay, sweetheart? Jackson told me what happened. We're here for you." The family whispering campaign had already started. The story was spreading like wildfire, a toxic web of lies. My own family was confused. My mom called, her voice full of concern. "What's going on, Alara? Why won't Liam answer his phone?" Jackson said something at the party, that it was a huge misunderstanding. She trailed off, not wanting to pry, but wanting answers. It hurt to tell her, to admit that my perfect marriage was falling apart before it had even begun. I felt so alone, so completely and utterly abandoned. My grief began to curdle. The sadness slowly turned into a quiet, burning rage. I looked at myself in the mirror, my eyes red from crying, my wedding hair now a tangled mess. This was Jackson's doing. This was his sick, twisted joke, and I was the punchline. He had waited until my happiest moment, when I was at my most vulnerable, and he had ripped it all away. I thought about Liam, how he had left me here, alone, in a hotel room that was supposed to be our sanctuary. He had promised to love and trust me, but at the very first sign of trouble, He had chosen to believe a liar over his own wife. The sting of his betrayal was just as sharp as Jackson's. My hands clenched into fists. I was done crying. I was done being a victim. Jackson thought he could ruin my life and get away with it. He thought I was still that broken girl from years ago, the one who couldn't fight back. He was wrong. That girl died a long time ago. The woman he was dealing with now was a survivor, and I was going to make him regret the day he ever tried to mess with me. I wasn't going to let him win. I was going to fight back, and I was going to hit him where it hurt the most. I was going to prove my innocence and burn his world to the ground in the process. I woke up the next morning not with a sense of peace, but with a cold, hard resolve. The rage I felt had settled deep in my bones, hardening into a plan. I wasn't just sad anymore. I was a soldier in a war I didn't ask for, and my enemy was Jackson. My first move was to leave the hotel suite. The sight of the unmade bed and the beautiful dress hanging there felt like a sick joke. I packed my things in a quiet fury, leaving only the clothes I wore and the dress. The last thing I did was take the flash drive from the table, a venomous little object that held the key to my destruction and, I hoped, to his. I needed to get away from this place that held so many painful memories. I drove straight to my cousin Mark's place. Mark was a few years older than me and the kind of guy who lived on coffee and computer code. He was the one person in my family I knew I could trust without a single doubt. He knew about my past, and he was the one who helped me get my life back on track years ago. When he saw me at his door, he didn't even have to ask. The look on my face told him everything. "I need your help," I said, my voice hoarse. "Jackson, he did something. He made a video. He's trying to ruin me." Mark didn't hesitate. He led me inside and sat me down on his couch. "Tell me everything," he said, his eyes filled with a quiet intensity. And I did. I told him about the wedding night, the wooden box, the flash drive, and the words on that horrible little note. I watched his face as I spoke, the easygoing smile he usually wore fading into a grim frown. When I was done, I handed him the flash drive. He looked at it like it was a ticking bomb. "He's been planning this," Mark said, his fingers flying across his keyboard as he plugged the drive into his computer. "This is not something you just throw together." He knew what he was doing. I watched as he worked, the familiar click-clack of his keyboard a small comfort in the chaos of my world. Mark was a genius, a real-life hacker who could find anything in the deep, dark corners of the internet. He spent the next few hours digging through the files on the flash drive. He looked at the video's metadata, the dates, the file names. He started to curse under his breath, a sure sign that he was onto something. He showed me what he found. The video was a collage of short clips, stitched together to look like a single event. He showed me the fake text messages, which were just screenshots he had doctored and then added to the video. "See," he said, pointing to some code on the screen. He changed the dates. "The messages aren't from last month, they're from 5 years ago." He just copied and pasted the text and changed the date on the phone itself before taking the screenshots. "This is so easy to prove, Ilara." My heart gave a little jump. There it was. The proof. A tiny sliver of hope. "Can you find the original files?" I asked, my voice shaking with anticipation. Mark looked at me, a thoughtful look on his face. "This kind of stuff leaves a trail," he said. "Especially with Jackson, he's not a ghost. He's probably got the originals somewhere, on a computer or in the cloud. We can find them." As Mark worked, I sat there, the hope growing stronger and stronger. But then my phone rang. It was Liam's mother. I didn't want to answer it, but I knew I had to. It was better to hear what she had to say than to let my imagination run wild. I answered, my voice steady. "Ilara," she said, her voice dripping with a fake sweetness that was worse than anger. "Are you with Liam? He hasn't been answering our calls. We're so worried about him." "He's not with me," I said, my voice cold. "He left me at the hotel." "Oh," she said, and I could hear the surprise in her voice. "Well, I just wanted to tell you how sorry I am for everything. Jackson told me what happened. He said he found out some terrible things about you. I can't believe you would do that to my son. After he did so much for you. After he helped you get clean." My blood ran cold. He had already poisoned her mind. "That's not what happened," I said, my voice hard. "Jackson made all of that up. He edited the video. It's a lie." "Oh, honey," she said, with a sigh that sounded far too practiced. "Jackson wouldn't do something like that. He loves his brother. He told us he was just trying to protect him." My anger, which had been a quiet burn, flared into a raging fire. He's a liar. He's a cruel, manipulative liar. And he's trying to tear us apart. Liam left me. He believed a lie over his own wife. And you, his mother, you're helping him. The line went dead. She had hung up on me. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking with a fury I had never felt before. They were all in on it. They were a family, and I was the outsider. They were all too willing to believe Jackson, to believe the worst in me. That's when the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. This wasn't just about a wedding gift and a video. This was about something deeper. Jackson wasn't just trying to protect Liam. He was trying to hurt me, to tear me down, to prove that I was nothing more than the girl from 5 years ago.
Why?
Was it just arrogance? Or was there something else? Mark's voice brought me back to reality. "I found them," he said, his face pale. "The original video files." He had them backed up on his cloud storage. "It's all here, Alara. The original videos, the real dates on the text messages, everything. He's been planning this for a while." I looked at the screen, at the tiny digital files that were my salvation, and I realized something. Jackson had underestimated me. He had used my past to hurt me, but my past was also what made me strong. It had taught me to fight, to survive, to never give up. I wasn't that scared girl anymore. I was a fighter. "Mark," I said, my voice low and firm, "don't just save these files. I want you to make copies of them. All of them. And I want you to send them to everyone. To Liam. To his parents. To all of his family. To all of his friends." Mark looked at me, his eyes wide. "Alara, are you sure?" I nodded. "I'm sure. I want to tell the story myself. I want them to hear it from me.
I want them to see what he did."
He made this a public spectacle. He used our wedding to ruin me. Well, now he can deal with the consequences. I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm going to expose him for the monster that he is. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with a fierce, cold resolve. This wasn't about getting Liam back anymore. It was about justice. It was about clearing my name and making sure that Jackson couldn't do this to anyone else. It was about showing them all that I was the one who was telling the truth, and he was the one who was lying. I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. I was going to make sure he paid for everything he had done. Every lie, every whisper, every moment of pain. He was going to regret the day he ever messed with me. The day I had planned for a week had finally arrived. I wasn't wearing a beautiful wedding dress, but a simple black pantsuit that felt like armor. Mark had helped me make all the final preparations. We had copied the files onto 2 separate laptops and a portable projector, just in case. He even helped me rent a private room at a quiet but respectable restaurant in the city. I had sent out invitations to Liam's parents, his brother, and a few of his closest family friends who had been at the wedding. The message was simple: a final chance to hear the truth. I also sent one to Jackson. He didn't know what was coming, and I was counting on his arrogance to bring him there. Liam was there too. He had called me the night before, his voice still distant but laced with a hint of concern. I had told him I needed him there, that this was important, and, to my surprise, he agreed. The tension in the private room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Liam sat across from me, his face pale and unreadable. His parents were there, his mother, Maria, looking at me with a cold, superior expression, and his father, David, with a frown of annoyance. They all believed Jackson's story. They all looked at me like I was the villain, the one who had brought all of this drama into their perfect family. Jackson arrived last, a confident smirk on his face. He nodded at Liam, then glanced at me with a look of pure smugness. He didn't even bother to say hello.
He thought he had won.
He thought I was just some sad, pathetic girl trying to cause a scene. He had no idea what was waiting for him. I waited for a moment, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. Then I stood up. The sound of my chair scraping against the floor made everyone turn to look at me. I took a deep breath, my hands not shaking for the first time in a week. My voice was steady and calm, betraying none of the fire raging inside me. "Thank you all for coming," I began, looking from one face to the next, finally settling on Liam's. "I know many of you have heard a version of what happened. You've heard Jackson's story. I'm here tonight to tell you the truth. Not my truth, not his truth, but the real truth. The truth that's been buried under a pile of lies." Jackson let out a small, mocking laugh. "Oh, here we go," he said, and a few people in the room shifted uncomfortably. I didn't let his comment faze me. I kept my eyes on him. "Jackson gave us a wedding gift," I continued, "a flash drive with a video on it. He told Liam to watch it because it would show him the real me. He said Liam could do better. Well, I want to show you all the same video, but I'm also going to show you something else. I'm going to show you the truth about Jackson." A hushed murmur went through the room. I walked over to the TV in the corner and plugged in a laptop. The screen came to life, showing a file folder. I opened it and clicked on a file titled Jackson's Wedding Gift. "This," I said, my voice ringing with authority, "is the video Jackson gave to Liam. It's a collection of video clips and fake text messages. Jackson used this to convince Liam that I was still using drugs and lying to him." I hit play. The video started, and everyone saw the same edited version I had seen on my wedding night. The shaky footage, the dramatic music, the fake text messages. I could feel their eyes on me, filled with judgment.
But I let it play.
When the video was over, I hit pause. "Now," I said, "I'm going to show you what he didn't want you to see." I switched to another file. This time, I showed them the raw footage. The original video files, complete with the timestamps and dates. They were all from 5 years ago. I played the real, unedited clips, showing the full conversations and the proper context. Then, I showed them the unedited text messages on the screen, comparing them side by side to the faked ones. The dates were different. The words were different. The truth was right there, in plain sight. Jackson's smug look had vanished. He was pale and shaking. "She's lying," he yelled, jumping to his feet. "She doctored those. She's good with computers. She's doing all of this because she's angry. Don't believe her." But the evidence was too clear. David, Liam's father, looked at his son with a troubled expression, and Liam's mother looked from me to her stepson, her eyes full of confusion. "I'm not lying," I said, my voice cutting through Jackson's panic. "And I'm not the only one who can prove it. The truth has a way of coming out, Jackson. You made this about my past, so I went back into your past, and I found some things you don't want anyone to know." His eyes widened in fear. He had no idea what I was talking about. He thought he was untouchable. "What are you talking about?" he spat, his voice laced with venom. "I don't know what you're talking about. This is all a game to you." "It's not a game," I said, my voice hard as stone. "I hired a private investigator to look into your background, and he found a few things you've been hiding from your family." I brought up another file on the screen. It was a file filled with financial documents, bank statements, and spreadsheets. "You see," I said, my voice low and steady, "you didn't just spend all of your money. You spent a lot of other people's money, too." The private investigator found a trail of receipts from casinos, poker sites, and a secret bank account. "You have a gambling problem, don't you, Jackson?" Jackson just stared at the screen, speechless. His face was a mask of shock and a dawning horror. "And how did you pay for all of this?" I continued, pointing to a spreadsheet. "You embezzled money from your father's company. Thousands of dollars a little at a time, so no one would notice. You've been siphoning money from your family for years. You were so worried about me being a bad influence on Liam that you didn't even notice the real thief in the family was you." The room erupted. David, Liam's father, stood up, his face red with rage. "Is this true, Jackson?" he roared. "Did you take money from the company?" Jackson's mouth was open, but no words came out. He looked from his father to his mother, and then to Liam, his eyes full of terror. He had no more lies left. He was a cornered animal, and I was the one who had trapped him. "You tried to destroy me," I said, my voice now a whisper. "You used my past to hurt me, but you underestimated me. I'm not that broken girl anymore. I'm a survivor, and I'm a fighter. I found my strength in the face of your lies, and I used it to find the truth." Liam was staring at the screen and then at me. The look on his face was a mix of shock, guilt, and a deep, crushing sorrow. He had left me. He had believed his brother over me. He had stood by and watched Jackson try to ruin my life. And now, he was seeing the truth in the most public way possible. He looked at me, his eyes full of a silent apology. But it was too late for apologies. The damage had been done. The betrayal was too deep. The room was filled with the sound of raised voices, a cacophony of accusations and denial. Jackson was yelling, trying to make excuses, but no one was listening. His world was crumbling, and I stood there, watching it all, the pain and the anger still in my heart, but also a sense of vindication. I had won. I had cleared my name, and I had exposed him for the monster that he was. The fight was over, and I was the one left standing. The room was a battlefield of broken trust and shattered lies. As Jackson's gambling and lies were revealed, his father's face went from shock to a boiling rage. David, a man known for being calm and controlled, now had his hands on his son's collar, yelling, "How could you? How could you betray us like this?" Jackson tried to say something, but his voice was a pathetic whisper. He was no longer the arrogant, confident stepbrother. He was just a boy caught in a terrible web of his own making. David and Maria were furious, their perfect little world crumbling around them. They shoved Jackson out of the room, yelling that they never wanted to see him again, that he was no longer their son. The last I saw of him, he was being dragged out by his father, his face pale and his eyes full of terror. The other family friends looked on in disbelief, their faces a mix of shock and disgust. They had believed his lies, just like Liam had. One by one, they all left, not looking at me, just hurrying out of the room as if they couldn't stand the sight of the mess they had just witnessed. Finally, it was just Liam and me. The silence in the room was heavy and suffocating, much worse than the chaos and yelling that had just filled it. The projector still showed the spreadsheets, the proof of Jackson's lies. I didn't bother to turn it off. I just stood there, my arms wrapped around myself, watching him. He was staring at the screen, his face a mask of shame and regret. I knew he was thinking about all the things I had told him, about how I pleaded with him to believe me, and how he had left me alone on our wedding night. He finally looked at me, his eyes full of a deep, crushing sorrow. "Ilara," he said, his voice a low, painful whisper. "I am so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have trusted you. I don't know what to say." The words, "I'm sorry," sounded so hollow. They were just two simple words, but they were supposed to fix everything. My heart, which had been a drum of cold fury, now felt like a hollow ache. I looked at him, the man I had married just a week ago, and all I could see was the face of the man who had abandoned me. "You should have believed me," I said, my voice quiet and steady. "You should have trusted me. I told you everything about my past, Liam. I gave you my whole story. I started our relationship with complete honesty, and you told me it didn't matter. You told me you loved me for who I was now. And then, at the first sign of trouble, at the very first test, you failed. You chose to believe a lie over your own wife. The woman you stood in front of all of our family and friends and promised to love and to cherish. You didn't even give me a chance to explain." He started to walk towards me, but I held up a hand to stop him. "Don't," I said. "Just don't. I'm not that girl anymore, Liam. I'm not the girl who cries and begs for someone to believe her. I fought for my life to get out of that dark place. And I would have fought with you. But you weren't there. You left me. You were supposed to be my husband, my partner, my rock. And instead, you just walked away." He stood there, frozen in place, a single tear running down his cheek. "I know," he said, his voice breaking. "I was an idiot. I was so angry, so hurt. I was confused. He's my brother, Ilara. My stepbrother. I never thought he could do something so horrible. I fell for it.
It was stupid.
I'm a fool. Please, please let me make it right. I shook my head, my own tears starting to fall.
You can't, I said.
You can't just make it right. You showed me who you are, Liam. You showed me that when things get hard, you choose doubt. You choose to believe a stranger over me. That's the kind of man I married. And I can't live with that. I can't live with that doubt hanging over our heads for the rest of our lives. Because the next time something bad happens, what are you going to do? Are you going to run and hide? Or are you going to stand and fight with me? He didn't have an answer. He just stood there, his shoulders hunched, his eyes filled with a helpless pain. And in that moment, I knew my decision was the right one. I walked over to my purse and pulled out my wedding ring. It was a beautiful, simple gold band with a tiny diamond in the center. I had loved it, but now it felt like a heavy, cold weight. I can't wear this anymore, I said, holding it out to him. It doesn't mean what I thought it meant. His eyes widened in a look of pure devastation. Ilara, no, he said, his voice desperate. Please don't do this. I'll do whatever you want. I'll make it right. Just don't give up on us. I placed the ring in his hand. The touch was quick, like a spark that had been extinguished. I'm not giving up on us, Liam. You gave up on us when you left me in that hotel room. This isn't just about Jackson anymore. This is about us. And I can't trust you anymore. I'm so sorry, but I can't. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I just walked out of the restaurant and into the cool night air. I got in my car and drove, not knowing where I was going, just knowing that I couldn't stay there anymore. I just kept driving until I found myself at my cousin Mark's apartment. I knocked on his door, and when he opened it, he just pulled me into a big hug. I broke down and cried, and I told him everything. He just held me, not saying a word, just being there. The next few days were a blur. My parents called, and I told them what had happened. They were heartbroken for me, but they were also so proud of me for standing up for myself. They told me I deserved so much better than a man who would believe a lie over me. They told me they loved me and that I could come home and stay with them for as long as I wanted.
It felt so good to hear them say that.
They were my real family, the ones who would always have my back. I wasn't a wife anymore. I wasn't a future in-law. I was just a Lara. My life was a blank slate again, and I didn't know what to do with it. But for the first time in a week, I felt a tiny spark of hope. I had lost a husband, but I had gained my self-respect. I had fought a good fight, and I had won, but the victory felt hollow. I was free, but I was also alone, and I wasn't sure what to do next. The first thing I did was find a new apartment. It was small, on the third floor of an old building, with a window that looked out onto a quiet street. It was a world away from the fancy hotel suite and the life Liam and I had planned. The walls were painted a simple white, and the floors were a worn wood that creaked under my feet. It was a blank slate, and for the first time in a week, that felt like a good thing. I moved my few belongings in, my old clothes, a few books, and the locket with my grandmother's picture. I left all the wedding gifts, all the things that reminded me of Liam and a future that no longer existed, at my old place. I left the wedding dress hanging in the closet, a ghost of a day that felt like it had happened to someone else. The quiet in the apartment was deafening. After the noise of the wedding, the shouting at the restaurant, and the crying in my car, the silence was overwhelming. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, just staring at the empty space. For days, that's all I did. The silence was a mirror, and in it, I saw all the pain and all the sadness. The memories of Jackson's smug face, of the video, of Liam walking away from me. They all played on a loop in my mind. The tears would come without warning, a hot, endless stream that left me feeling completely empty and raw. I had won the battle against Jackson, but the war inside me was just beginning. The victory felt hollow, and the anger that had fueled me for a week now felt like a heavy weight in my chest. I knew I couldn't stay like that forever. My cousin Mark came over and just sat with me, not saying a word, just being there. He would order us food and make sure I ate. He was a silent comfort, and I was so grateful for him. One day, he brought me a list of therapists. I looked at the list for a long time, and then I finally made a call. I was scared. The last time I had gone to therapy, it was because I was broken and lost. Now, I was a different kind of broken. My first session was hard. I sat in a comfortable chair and told a stranger everything. I talked about my past, my addiction, my hard-won sobriety. I talked about meeting Liam, the perfect wedding, and then the crushing, heartbreaking betrayal. The therapist just listened, her face kind and non-judgmental. When I was done, she told me something that stuck with me. "You didn't just lose a husband," she said. "You lost your trust in the person you thought was your greatest ally. That's a different kind of loss. And it will take time to heal." She was right. The betrayal from Jackson was one thing. I had always known he was a bit of a snake. But Liam? He was supposed to be my safe place. He was supposed to be the one person I could trust with my life.
And he had failed me.
The sting of that failure was the hardest thing to get over. The thought of it was a physical pain in my chest. It was a scar that I knew would take a very long time to fade. Liam tried to call me. I saw his name on my phone, and my heart would leap into my throat. The first few times, I almost answered. I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted to hear him say he was sorry again, maybe in a way that sounded more real. But I stopped myself. I would look at the screen and remember the look on his face when he left me in that hotel room. I would remember the doubt in his eyes. And I would let it ring. He sent me text messages, long paragraphs filled with apologies and promises to do better. He told me he was talking to a therapist, that he was trying to understand why he had done what he did. He said he loved me and that he would wait for me to forgive him. I read every single one of those texts. They made me sad. They made me angry. They made me feel guilty. I thought about what my therapist had said. When you forgive someone, you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for yourself. But I wasn't ready to do that yet. I wasn't ready to let go of the anger. It was the only thing that was keeping me from falling completely apart. I needed the anger to protect myself. I needed it to remind me that what he did was wrong and that I deserved better. The healing was slow. I started to go for walks in the morning. I would walk to a coffee shop and just sit there, watching the world go by. I started to make a list of things I wanted to do for myself. I got a new job at a small bookshop, a quiet place where I could be around the things I loved. The work was simple and peaceful, and it helped me to not think about everything that had happened. I started to paint again, something I hadn't done since my dark days. I would sit for hours, a blank canvas in front of me, and just paint. The colors were dark at first, all blacks and grays, but slowly, a bit of light started to come through. One day, I was walking home from the bookshop, and I saw a couple laughing, their hands intertwined. A wave of sadness washed over me. I thought of Liam, of the life we were supposed to have, of the first time we held hands. The pain was still there, but it wasn't a sharp, stabbing pain anymore. It was a dull ache, a ghost of what it used to be. I knew I still had a long way to go, but I also knew I was moving forward. I was no longer a wife, a fiancée, or even a girlfriend. I was just a Lara. I was a person who was trying to find her way in the world. I was a survivor, and I was a fighter. I had faced my demons and come out the other side. The story of my life wasn't over. It was just beginning. I had no idea what the future held. I didn't know if I would ever see Liam again. I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive him. I didn't know if I would ever be able to love or trust anyone again. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. I was on my own, but I wasn't lost. And that was enough for now. My new life was a quiet, steady rhythm. The morning started with a cup of coffee and a book, not the frantic rush of a life I was building with someone else. My job at the bookstore was a haven of peace. The smell of old paper and the silence of the shelves were a comfort. I was learning to breathe again. My therapy sessions were hard, but they were working. I was starting to understand that what had happened wasn't my fault, that Jackson's cruelty and Liam's doubt were their burdens to carry, not mine. I was slowly, painfully, learning to forgive myself for not seeing it coming. And with every day that passed, the sharp, raw pain of the betrayal turned into a dull ache, a scar that reminded me of how far I had come. I hadn't seen Liam since that night at the restaurant. I had seen his name pop up on my phone, and sometimes a friend would tell me he had asked about me. I would feel a pang in my chest, a mix of sadness and anger, but I wouldn't respond. I needed the space. I needed to be alone. I needed to find out who I was without him. My life was so different now. It was simple and it was mine. I had a small circle of friends, a good job, and a quiet apartment that felt safe. I was finally starting to feel like myself again. It was a cold, rainy Tuesday, and the bookstore was almost empty. I was restocking the fantasy section when I heard the bell above the door ring. I looked up and my heart stopped. It was Liam. He was standing there, a black umbrella in his hand, his hair wet with rain. He looked tired, older than I remembered. The look on his face wasn't one of arrogance or doubt. It was a look of quiet, painful regret. My hands started to shake, and I felt a wave of emotions rush over me. Anger, sadness, a terrible, aching longing. I hadn't realized how much I had missed him until that moment. He walked over to me, his hands in his pockets. "Ilara," he said, his voice a low, painful whisper. "I know you don't want to see me, but I had to. I just had to." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, the books in my hands feeling heavy and useless. "Why are you here, Liam?" I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. "I have nothing left to say to you." "I know," he said, his eyes filled with a raw honesty that I had never seen before. "I'm not here for you to say anything. I'm here to say something to you. I'm here to tell you that I'm so sorry. Not just for what happened, but for everything. I've been in therapy, Ilara. I've been doing the work. My therapist told me that I had a choice. I could either blame Jackson for everything, or I could look at myself and admit my own part in this. I've been looking at myself, and I've been dealing with my own failures. I should have trusted you. I should have stood by you. I should have been the man you thought I was. I was a coward, Ilara. I was so scared of losing everything, and in my fear, I lost the one thing that mattered most." His words were honest, and I could feel the truth in them. This wasn't the same man who had left me. He had done the work. He had faced his demons. But it was too late. The damage had been done. "I know you're sorry, Liam," I said, my voice heavy with a deep sadness. "But sorry isn't enough. It's not enough to fix what's broken. You didn't just hurt me, Liam. You shattered my trust. Not just in you, but in myself. You made me question everything I thought I knew. I had to go on a whole journey of my own to put myself back together. I had to find a new life, a new way of being, and I had to do it all by myself. I had to learn to trust myself again. I had to learn to stand on my own 2 feet. And I did. I'm not that same person anymore." He nodded, his eyes filled with tears. "I know," he said. "I see it. You're so strong, Ilara. You're stronger than I ever was. You didn't just survive. You rebuilt yourself from the ground up. I look at you, and I see the woman I always knew you could be. And I realize that I am not the one who saved you. You saved yourself. You didn't need me to protect you. And that's the hardest part. The hardest part is realizing that the man who was supposed to be your hero was a coward who ran away when you needed him most." He was crying now, and I felt a wave of empathy for him. The man in front of me was heartbroken. He had lost me, and he knew it was his own fault. The tears started to fall from my eyes, too. Not because I was sad, but because I was finally letting go. All the anger, all the pain, all the sadness. I was letting it all go. "I can't go back, Liam," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I just can't. I'm not the same person. I had to find my own strength. I had to find my own way. And I did. I have a life now. A good life. A life where I am in control. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. I'm done with the anger, with the pain, with the fighting. I'm just ready to move on. And I think you should, too." He just stood there, tears streaming down his face. "I'll never stop loving you, Ilara," he said. "Never. I'll never stop loving the man I thought you were," I said. I'll never forget the man you could have been. But that man, he doesn't exist anymore. Not for me. Goodbye, Liam. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me for a long, long moment, a look of pure sorrow in his eyes. Then, he turned and walked out of the bookstore, the bell above the door jingling as he left. I watched him go, his figure disappearing into the cold, rainy day. And then he was gone. I was alone again. But this time it was a different kind of alone. It wasn't the lonely, abandoned feeling of the wedding night. It was a sense of peace, a feeling of freedom. I had faced my demons, I had stood up for myself, and I had chosen myself. I had a whole future ahead of me. I didn't know what it would hold. I didn't know if I would ever fall in love again, or if I would ever be able to trust someone completely. But I knew that whatever happened, I would be okay. I was a survivor, and my journey was just beginning. And that brings us to the end of Alara's story. We watched her go from a heartbroken bride to a woman who found her strength, stood up for herself, and rebuilt her life on her own terms. It's a journey about betrayal, revenge, and the hard but necessary work of healing. What did you think? Did you connect with Alara's pain or her ultimate triumph? Let me know in the comments below. What part of her journey resonated with you the most? If this story moved you, please hit the like button. And for more emotional and powerful stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications by hitting that bell icon. Your support helps us create more content, and we love hearing from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.